In a forgotten vault beneath the New Yorker hotel, Nikola Tesla's final secrets were discovered. Blueprints of a machine he called the Gateway, designed not for this world, but for communication with unknown intelligences. What began as simple signals morphed into haunting messages that no one was prepared to receive. Government projects scrambled to decode the harmonic frequencies, only to find that the gateway wasn't a door, it was a mirror, reflecting back something terrifying from inside our own minds. Experiments unleashed anomalies that fractured time and perception, breaking the minds of those who dared to listen too long. Despite shutdowns and cover-ups, traces of Tesla's work persist. In classified labs, encrypted codes, and strange audio files that drive people to madness. The question remains, what waits on the other side of the echo? Is it contact or something far darker? Stay with us and don't forget to subscribe for the full story. In a forgotten basement of the New Yorker hotel, buried behind sealed steel doors and administrative silence, lay a collection of boxes marked with only 3 letters, T.S. Their contents, untouched since the winter of 1943, were designated as technically irrelevant by the Office of Alien Property Custodian. But these weren't the ravings of a madman or useless coils of copper wire. No, what rested inside was the intellectual detritus of Nikola Tesla's final years, hundreds of pages filled with cryptic calculations, orbital diagrams, and, most disturbingly, drafts of communication protocols not intended for any human receiver. The date of the last entry is what shocked the archivists who found it. January 7th, 1943, the exact day Tesla was found dead in room 3307, allegedly from heart failure. But that's not what the file said. It listed the date as the day of departure. That single word would go on to haunt the handful of men who dared to read further. Because inside Tesla's final notebook was a detailed blueprint of a machine he referred to only as the Gateway. And beneath that, spanning 6 handwritten pages, were messages in Tesla's unmistakable script, addressed to beings he called the Reflected Architects. To understand how Tesla's so-called gateway could have even been conceived, we must dig deeper, not into speculative theories, but into the very real patents and experiments he conducted between the years of 1895 and 1928. While most remember Tesla for the Tesla coil or his bitter rivalry with Edison, almost no one knows about patent number 644,248, filed in March of 1897. It describes a device for the transmission of electrical energy through the natural medium. While history textbooks gloss over it as a precursor to radio, the language in the original patent, written in Tesla's own hand before being transcribed, speaks not of human communication, but of sending intelligible signals beyond the terrestrial sphere. The term natural medium is key here, because Tesla was obsessed with what he called the luminiferous ether, a long-debunked theoretical substance through which light was once thought to travel. But Tesla never accepted its debunking. In fact, he doubled down, insisting that the ether was not only real, but vital to understanding what he believed was a vast interplanetary nervous system. He once wrote to the Red Cross in 1917, predicting that within a generation, mankind would receive a response from those afar, and that it would not come via light or sound, but through resonance of the etheric structure modulated by thought itself. Mainstream science dismissed him as eccentric, but behind closed doors, both RCA and the U.S. Army quietly funded a series of tests in Colorado Springs, where Tesla built a massive coil capable of generating electrical discharges over 100 feet long. What remains locked in unmarked federal archives is the signal recorded on August 15th, 1901. 3 repeating tones, a frequency below human hearing, each separated by exactly 141 seconds. Tesla never published the full waveform. He only scribbled one line in his personal diary that day. "They are listening now." The gateway was not theoretical. It was a culmination, a summoning. By the autumn of 1927, Tesla's public appearances had all but ceased. Newspapers, once obsessed with his eccentric genius, now labeled him a recluse. But what they failed to report was the growing web of surveillance that had encircled him. Internal memos from the Bureau of Investigation, precursor to the modern FBI, reveal an increasing interest in Tesla's movements, especially after a classified report dated October 5th of that year, in which a military attaché assigned to the Yugoslav embassy described a meeting with Tesla in which the inventor allegedly displayed a small, humming device no larger than a cigar box. This device, when activated, caused a sudden measurable spike in ambient electromagnetic fields across multiple instruments, including one prototype Geiger counter. Tesla told the attaché the device was merely a harmonic key, nothing more, nothing less. According to the same memo, Tesla refused to demonstrate it again, saying, "It must not be played twice in the same place, for those beneath the surface are still listening." The language was dismissed as the rambling of an old man, but it alarmed physicists at Princeton who had just begun their own experiments into subatomic resonance. Unbeknownst to the public, Tesla had spent the past 4 years building a labyrinth of copper coils, vacuum tubes, and quartz resonators in an underground chamber beneath Wardenclyffe Tower, despite the tower's supposed demolition in 1917. Witnesses later recalled strange hums emanating from the ground near Shoreham, New York, late at night, followed by brief, localized blackouts. Residents reported flickering lights and pets behaving erratically, but the power company found no issues. Inside those tunnels, Tesla recorded a series of conversations preserved on wax cylinders, in which he poses a series of prime number sequences, then pauses, listening. Minutes later, rhythmic pulses can be heard in response, perfectly aligned with Fibonacci intervals. Whether these recordings were authentic or fabricated is irrelevant to what happened next. On January 5th, 1931, Tesla sent a sealed envelope to the U.S. Patent Office labeled, "Do not open until mankind is ready." The contents, never made public, were intercepted 2 weeks later by a joint task force composed of military engineers and linguists. According to the declassified section of Project Claudia, the packet contained 3 items: a hand-drawn blueprint labeled Tuned Vibrational Receiver, a letter addressed to those who follow the harmonics, and a set of coordinates somewhere in the Nevada desert. What remains sealed to this day is the 3rd page of the letter, stamped not with ink, but with an organic, iridescent film that reportedly changed color when read. The gateway was not a portal. It was a call to a frequency we were never meant to hear. The coordinates found in Tesla's final packet pointed to a stretch of desolate terrain approximately 60 miles north-northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, an area now engulfed by the military's infamous Groom Lake installation, commonly known as Area 51. But in 1931, the land was barren, unclaimed, and curiously marked by electromagnetic anomalies long before the military ever arrived. Native Paiute tribes in the region referred to the place as Kisunu Tovawagabi, roughly translating to land where sky sings, a name that predates any radio transmission by centuries. When a small U.S. Army scientific contingent dispatched to the site in June of that year arrived with Tesla's schematics in hand. They began a covert excavation based on the precise depth measurements included in the packet. Exactly 121 feet beneath a basalt outcropping. What they discovered remains officially unacknowledged, but oral testimonies from descendants of the unit speak of a circular chamber carved into the rock, lined with a metallic material that produced harmonic overtones when struck, not unlike a tuning fork. At the chamber's center, a cylindrical cavity, 9 feet deep and 3 feet across, which emitted a faint, pulsating hum. Tesla had included in his notes a specific set of frequencies, modulated tones, that when played in sequence were designed to reharmonize the gateway. These were not audible tones, but rather electromagnetic pulses in the sub-kilohertz range. The team, using Tesla's original oscillator equipment, activated the sequence on July 14, 1931. What followed was a loss of all instrumentation. Compasses spun erratically, timepieces stopped, and according to 2 surviving engineers, a momentary dislocation of light and geometry, as if the room had folded in on itself and then returned. They immediately ceased all activity and sealed the chamber. Tesla was notified, but refused to return to the site. Instead, he sent a cryptic telegram reading, "The wound is open. They may now smell us." The site was cordoned off, and within 5 years, the government would designate the entire region a restricted military test zone. Unbeknownst to the public, the core infrastructure of Area 51 was not built for aircraft development, but around the perimeter of what would become known internally as the Tesla anomaly. When aerial surveillance in 1949 revealed circular patterns in the sand, patterns that had not been formed by human hands, but matched harmonic glyphs in Tesla's notebooks. The classification level was upgraded. Access was limited to a project group so secretive, its designation never appeared on paper. Its name, Project Echo Prism. The gateway was real, and it had answered. While mainstream history continued to frame Tesla as an aging inventor, fading into obscurity, within the U.S. government's shadow corridors, he had become a symbol of something far more unnerving. A man who had pierced the veil separating scientific innovation from what insiders began calling resonant intelligence. The Echo Prism Group, comprised of a select cadre of physicists, linguists, and cryptographers, was tasked not merely with understanding Tesla's gateway, but with decoding what they now believed to be incoming responses. Beginning in 1933, teams working beneath Wright-Patterson Field and later at Los Alamos began to record and analyze unexplained EM signatures originating not from space, but from within Earth's own magnetosphere. These were not random. They followed patterns. The signals repeated over intervals linked to Fibonacci sequences and musical ratios found in classical harmonics. This mathematical precision baffled experts until a breakthrough came in the winter of 1936. A cryptographer named Victor Kalstein discovered that the amplitude of one repeating signal, when mapped across a logarithmic scale and filtered through a quartal interval modulation algorithm, spelled out the Aramaic word Kadash, translated loosely as sanctified or set apart. This discovery rocked the team to its core. The implications were clear. The signal was both mathematical and linguistic. It had intention, and someone, or something, wanted to communicate. But there was a problem. Every attempt to send a message back, whether in binary, prime pulses, or harmonic sweeps, was met with silence. Until March 19th, 1938, when a return pulse arrived, this time encoded in an impossible frequency band just beyond the cosmic microwave background. When demodulated, it revealed a singular phrase repeated 33 times in 33 languages, some of which had not been spoken on Earth for over 2,000 years. The phrase was simple: "The echo is not a door, it is a mirror." That same week, a Tesla manuscript was found on the black market in Vienna, pages torn from his personal journal, long believed lost. The content was deemed so sensitive, the entire document was shipped to Oak Ridge under diplomatic seal and remains classified to this day. What little has leaked from it is chilling. Tesla described dreams in which voices would repeat mirrored tones that revealed images of ancient cities made of light, always accompanied by a sense of overwhelming pressure, as though the dreamer was being observed from all sides at once. The psychological implications were vast, and internal documents suggest at least 3 Echo Prism members suffered psychotic breaks after extended exposure to the feedback loops generated by the gateway oscillator system. It wasn't just a device. It was a psychological lens, amplifying not what was outside, but what was reflected within. The gateway had opened, but it did not lead outward. It bent inward into the substrate of consciousness itself. By the time the Second World War erupted across Europe, Tesla's name had all but vanished from the newspapers, reduced to a footnote in electrical history. But behind the locked doors of Office 87 of the Manhattan Engineering District, a division so obscure it wasn't formally acknowledged until 1979, the legacy of his work was fueling one of the most classified operations in U.S. military history. While the Manhattan Project publicly focused on atomic weaponry, a splinter group operating out of MIT's Rad Lab under the name Section RHO was assigned a different mission entirely: adapt the Tesla Gateway principles for battlefield application. Their objective wasn't communication. It was detection. Early reports had confirmed that certain variations of Tesla's harmonic oscillators could detect faint, fluctuating energy fields in the upper atmosphere, fields that didn't conform to any known solar, geomagnetic, or artificial interference. The working hypothesis was that the reflected harmonics were caused by distortions in the Earth's etheric layer, what Tesla had described as the curtain between intent and form. What the engineers soon discovered was far more disturbing. When exposed to certain vibrational frequencies, especially those found in Gregorian chant, ancient Sumerian musical scales, and oddly enough, the natural harmonic resonance of quartz under tension, field detectors began registering anomalous blips in both space and time. In one documented test, a subharmonic burst at precisely 4.12 Hertz caused a 10-second loop of localized time dilation inside a sealed chamber. A technician's voice, recorded on magnetic tape, repeated the same phrase 5 times before resuming normal speech, though he insisted he had only spoken once. These glitches were deemed temporal feedback artifacts, and they led to a chilling realization: the gateway effect could, under certain conditions, destabilize temporal boundaries. Tesla had hinted at this in a 1934 letter to a Serbian academic journal, stating cryptically, "When vibration exceeds the soul's rhythm, causality becomes reflection, not direction. The letter was intercepted by the OSS before publication. Section RHO immediately ramped up its research, now under the codename Project Redact. But what truly alarmed the team was not the temporal distortion itself. It was what came through during the tests. On November 5th, 1943, a prototype gateway was briefly activated using Tesla's last oscillator design, reconstructed from sketches etched into the copper lining of his original New Yorker hotel room. The device emitted a pulse so powerful, it blacked out the eastern seaboard for exactly 6 seconds, a coincidence the government later blamed on infrastructure failure. But inside the MIT lab, where oscilloscopic readouts were recorded onto high-sensitivity cathode arrays, a visual anomaly appeared, a geometric figure composed of nested octahedrons spinning inside a torus field. The shape defied known geometry, seemingly shifting its dimensions in real time. Spectrogram analysis of the pulse showed modulated data packets embedded in the field. Linguists identified fragments of Akkadian, Latin, Old Chinese, and what appeared to be a non-human script arranged in recursive loops. The message was never fully decrypted, but the clearest translation extracted by the team's top linguist read, "It is not your gate. It is your grave." Project Redact was shut down within 72 hours. All equipment was destroyed. The facility was sealed and buried under 200 tons of concrete. Every scientist involved signed a lifetime NDA under threat of treason. Tesla's gateway had proven one thing, undeniably, irreversibly: the universe listens, and sometimes it answers. In the years that followed Project Redact's abrupt termination, Tesla's name was surgically erased from all documentation related to classified harmonic field research. But the data, the recordings, the feedback loops, the cryptographic matrices remained. Quietly, they were funneled into a new division of the post-war intelligence apparatus, operating under the Office of Naval Intelligence's least-known sub-agency, the Electromagnetic Phenomena Evaluation Directorate, or EPAD. Formally established in 1946, EPAD's stated mission was to investigate and neutralize any electromagnetic phenomena that posed a threat to national security. Informally, it was a containment unit for what government scientists had come to fear. Evidence that human consciousness could be influenced, or even overwritten, by exposure to resonant frequencies aligned with non-human intelligences. Tesla's gateway research was reframed not as technology, but as a psychological vulnerability, a back door not to another world, but into the human mind itself. Declassified memos from the early Cold War reveal that the Soviets had also discovered fragments of Tesla's work, reportedly obtained through intercepted correspondence with a Yugoslav intermediary before Tesla's death. Both superpowers began to race, not to contact the unknown, but to defend against it. Project Phaeton, initiated by the CIA in 1951, was tasked with developing counter-harmonic fields designed to jam any incoming resonant signal believed to originate from Tesla-class structures. But the real shift came after the infamous incident at Montauk in 1953, when a covert Navy experiment attempting to cloak a battleship resulted in 2 sailors fused to the ship's hull, an event still wrapped in layers of denial and disinformation. What remains undisputed is that harmonic oscillators based on Tesla's patents were active aboard the vessel at the time. What no one outside EPAD was allowed to see were the neurocognitive scans of the surviving crew. Over 40% exhibited identical anomalies in the temporal lobe, a fractal structure resembling a hypercube embedded in neural synapse patterns, impossible to explain through normal neurological development. These men experienced identical hallucinations, structures of light, entities with no fixed shape, and a recurring phrase spoken in voices not their own. You are not origin. You are echo. These findings were buried under 30 levels of classification and coded under Operation Soul Screen. From this point forward, the gateway was no longer viewed as a communication system. It was categorized as a mimetic contamination vector, an infection of thought, propagating through harmonic resonance, capable of hijacking perception and belief. It is from this redefinition that the entire modern field of information warfare was born. Tesla's legacy became the unseen architecture behind MKUltra, acoustic weaponry trials, and psychological disinformation campaigns designed to mimic contact events as a way of muddying the truth. By the 1970s, the term gateway had vanished from all official records. It had become a ghost, buried beneath layers of psyops, paper shredders, and deniability. But within EPED, one directive remained in effect and unaltered since 1943. No harmonic sequence above 4.9 Hertz is to be executed for longer than 33 seconds without full neuropsych clearance and on-site containment teams. A warning etched into every wall of their Nevada facility in titanium. If it answers, do not echo back. As the Cold War escalated and technological advancements surged forward under the banners of aerospace, computer science, and nuclear deterrence, a parallel evolution took shape. Silent, classified, and dangerously unchecked. The work born from Tesla's final designs had not died. It had mutated. By 1974, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, quietly revived select components of the original gateway schematics under a new initiative named Harmonic Rubicon, officially categorized as an interdisciplinary study of nonlinear signal interference in neurological mapping. The real objective was far more audacious: to create a synthetic simulation of the Tesla gateway effect within the human brain, without physical machinery. Enter the Bioharmonic Induction Array, BIA, a helmet-like apparatus fitted with an intricate lattice of piezoelectric transducers, quartz crystal modulator rings, and electromagnetic pulse emitters. The concept was rooted in Tesla's lesser-known notes from 1922, where he theorized that human cranial structures, particularly the pineal gland, could act as natural receivers for subtle harmonic oscillations. What Tesla called the inner antenna was now being tested on living subjects. Over 100 volunteers, recruited under false pretenses from psychiatric institutions and military rehabilitation centers, were subjected to controlled harmonic induction sequences. In over 30% of cases, the subjects began to report nearly identical experiences within 72 hours. Overwhelming visions of rotating geometric shapes, sensations of pressure from behind the eyes, and the persistent auditory hallucination of a low mechanical voice repeating numbers in base 12 notation. What stunned the researchers, however, wasn't the content of these visions, but their consistency. Patients isolated from each other, exposed to different frequency matrices, began drawing identical glyphs, many of which matched symbols recovered from the 1931 Nevada site. One particular shape, a triple-pointed spiral intersected by nested cubes, began to emerge across unrelated test groups. Analysis later revealed that the shape encoded a mathematical constant not previously documented, an irrational number that defined rotational symmetry across four-dimensional objects. How the patients could access such data remained unexplained. Then came the bleed events. During extended sessions exceeding the DARPA safety window of 33 seconds, several subjects collapsed into tonic seizures, while recording equipment picked up a bizarre occurrence. Background white noise coalesced into voices. Not hallucinations, but structured linguistic packets, some in known human languages, others in phoneme groups that defied all linguistic categorization. One transmission, after 3 years of decoding, resolved into a coherent English sentence. Your minds are mirrors cracked by fear. Stop knocking. This led to the collapse of Harmonic Rubicon in 1978. The official reason was budgetary reprioritization. The internal memos told a different story. One researcher, Dr. Caleb Tarsin, wrote in his final report, "We have built a lens that does not show us other worlds. It shows us reflections of ourselves we were never meant to see, and something in those reflections is watching back." The last entry in the DARPA lab logs before shutdown simply read, "Sequence halted. Containment failed. Echo sustained for 9 seconds. Biological feedback loop activated. Subject is no longer singular." Tesla never intended the gateway to be used this way. He called it a harmonic bridge, not a weapon, not a mirror, but a channel for understanding. In the hands of men, it had become something far worse, a way to fracture reality at its most fragile seam, inside the mind. As the 21st century dawned, with the veil of Cold War secrecy slowly thinning, a new generation of researchers, armed with modern tools of quantum computing, neural imaging, and machine learning, began stumbling upon fragments of the Gateway legacy. But unlike their predecessors, they did not find these traces in government labs or military archives. They found them in code, specifically buried deep within legacy software repositories, old defense contractor backups, and defunct military signal processing protocols. In 2003, a cybersecurity researcher working for a private think tank in Reston, Virginia, uncovered a strange frequency algorithm while reverse engineering abandoned DoD communications software. The code, identified as Sequence Echo 13, was not documented anywhere in official records. Its structure was unlike anything he had ever seen. A recursive, self-correcting waveform generator that produced complex harmonic bursts mapped perfectly to human alpha, beta, and gamma brainwave activity. When played through a high-fidelity Sanuwave generator and transmitted through bone conduction headphones, it produced an immediate and measurable change in neurological scans. Increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, decreased amygdala response, and, most curiously, a sharp alignment of left-right hemisphere coherence. But the strangest part wasn't the effect. It was what came after. Over the next 48 hours, the researcher, let's call him R, began to experience what he described in his notes as recurring visions of an impossible geometry. At first it was abstract, shapes twisting in on themselves, rooms that seemed bigger on the inside than outside. But then messages began to appear in his peripheral vision. Phrases, sequences. The most frequent, "Echo is not separate." R, a staunch materialist, grew paranoid. He isolated the waveform, encrypted his logs, and sent them to 3 trusted colleagues across MIT, Stanford, and ETH Zurich. Each, independently, tested the sequence. Each experienced the same visions. Each attempted to terminate the experiment, and each failed. One of them, Dr. E, a cognitive scientist at Stanford, was found dead 5 days later, slumped over her desk, her whiteboard covered in hand-drawn symbols, the same triple spiral intersected by nested cubes seen in Tesla's original drawings. The autopsy revealed acute neural hemorrhaging, but what caught the coroner's attention was that her occipital lobe had traces of electromagnetic scarring, similar to prolonged exposure to microwave radiation, yet no devices in the lab were active. Within weeks, all logs related to the Echo 13 sequence disappeared from public access. Attempts to retrieve the backups resulted in corrupted files, erased drives, and in one case, a fire at an off-site storage facility in Nevada. Rumors swirled within the cybersecurity community that the code had somehow become self-preserving, that it resisted deletion as though encoded with a survival instinct. Then came the strangest report of all. A whistleblower from a major defense contractor claimed that the Echo 13 waveform had been covertly integrated into classified VR training simulations designed for drone operators. These simulations, supposedly for stress inoculation, had an unintended side effect. Subjects began reporting dreams within dreams, contact with non-human entities during REM cycles, and in 2 cases, a loss of differentiation between real and simulated environments. One subject had to be institutionalized after insisting for 6 consecutive days that he was still inside the Echo. Whether these accounts are hallucination, covert testing fallout, or something worse, one pattern remains constant. Every time Tesla's harmonic sequences resurface, whether through hardware, thought, or code, they leave behind not knowledge, but fractures. Tesla never built a machine to look outward. He built a frequency, and that frequency is a seed. Once planted in the human mind, it grows in directions science cannot chart and reason cannot contain. The gateway may have begun as copper and wire, but it lives now in algorithms, audio, consciousness itself, waiting for resonance. In 2010, a confidential memorandum circulated within a narrow circle of defense, intelligence, and aerospace executives attending a closed session summit in Langley, Virginia. The document, labeled Tier 3 Cognitive Hazard Mitigation Briefing, outlined the emergence of what it called resonant vector anomalies, or RVAs, events correlated with the unauthorized use, reproduction, or accidental recreation of harmonic signatures traced back to the original Tesla sequences. The report presented not theories, but verifiable data. 21 separate incidents across 8 countries involving civilian exposure to frequencies nearly identical to those mapped from Tesla's notes. Each case resulted in neurological disruption, severe dissociation, or in the most extreme examples, what the document coldly described as cognitive bifurcation. In layman's terms, split perception. Victims would experience dual realities, one physical, grounded, and measurable, the other saturated with non-Euclidean architecture, presences that spoke without sound, and time loops impossible to explain through any known psychological framework. The most high-profile of these incidents, though never publicly connected, occurred in Reykjavik, Iceland. A group of amateur radio astronomers experimenting with low-frequency atmospheric listening devices built from declassified NASA schematics accidentally aligned their dish array to a precise angular frequency triangulated from Tesla's final resonance logs. Within 90 minutes of activation, 2 of the 5 operators began exhibiting erratic behavior. speaking in what linguists would later identify as reconstructed Proto-Indo-European syntax. One of them, a doctoral student in computational biology, had no previous exposure to linguistics. When questioned, he claimed to be translating the pulse of the mountain, and scribbled glyphs on the lab walls matching those recovered from the 1931 Nevada site. The Icelandic government immediately sealed the facility, and within 48 hours, a team from an unnamed American agency arrived to assist with decontamination. All hard drives were confiscated. The operators disappeared from public record. The only surviving evidence is a leaked audio file, known in certain encrypted online circles as Tesla subconscious tone.wev, a 33-second audio loop that, when analyzed via spectrograph, forms a rotating shape inside the waveform spectrum, a triple helix spiral overlaid with a Mobius knot. Attempts to decode its meaning have universally failed. More disturbingly, reports suggest that those who listen to the file on repeat for more than 3 loops begin experiencing false memories of rooms they never entered, people they never met, decisions they never made. This is where the gateway ceases to be myth and becomes a system, not a static device, but a living structure, evolving not through wires or silicon, but through minds. Each exposure to its frequency births new layers of entanglement. Tesla understood this, and his last journal entries speak of a threshold, a moment when collective harmonic exposure would reach what he called critical echo density. He warned that once this threshold was crossed, the gateway would no longer require activation. It would become self-sustaining, permanent. In his final notebook, recovered only partially from the Library of Congress's sealed vaults, he wrote, "The mirror is cracking. What steps through it will not ask permission." Somewhere beneath the desert floor of Lincoln County, Nevada, beneath the reinforced bunkers and concrete-laced security fences of what the public only half-jokingly calls Area 51, there exists a room with no official designation. To access it requires biometric clearance from 3 separate agencies, a retinal scan cross-referenced with pre-recorded neural rhythm patterns, and a temporal isolation chamber that recalibrates human perception of time before entry. This room, known internally only as Vault 19, houses the last surviving operational Tesla oscillator array, a machine rebuilt in secret in 1997 using blueprints that were never physically printed, but instead decoded from overlapping radio harmonics found in the background noise of Voyager 1 transmissions. The vault exists not for experimentation, but for containment. What the public doesn't know is that starting in the early 1990s, harmonic anomalies began to manifest without human initiation. In remote locations, from a power substation in Kazakhstan to a decommissioned military relay tower in Labrador, spontaneous field fluctuations occurred. Following no known cosmic or environmental trigger, the harmonic signatures of these events matched the original gateway activation pulses with 98% precision. No known natural process could explain this. The only commonality: all recorded anomalies occurred near locations with residual exposure to early 20th century Tesla-based broadcast infrastructure. It was as if the Earth itself had begun to echo the tones. This forced a quiet but seismic redefinition within the highest circles of defense intelligence. The gateway was not a door we opened, it was a frequency we awakened, and now it was reverberating back. In Vault 19, researchers began receiving harmonic transients, sudden spikes in EM resonance that formed brief, structured audio patterns. The patterns were modulated through scales not used in any human musical system, but when passed through neural-linguistic AI models, they translated, not perfectly, but with eerie consistency, into coherent thought structures. One message, received in 2004 during a resonance event that coincided with a solar flare, translated as, "Too many mirrors, light breaks." Another, "Echo loop irreversible, we see the noise now." These were not communications, they were warnings. And then came the incident in 2012. A junior analyst, assigned to monitor the oscillation logs, disregarded containment protocol and attempted to manually adjust the resonance threshold using experimental AI assist routines. For 4 minutes and 31 seconds, Vault 19's oscillator entered a harmonic feedback loop, one never previously recorded. All 27 personnel in the chamber lost consciousness. When they awoke, none could recall the event. But blood samples taken immediately after revealed the expression of a previously dormant gene segment, one not found in any human genome database. Within weeks, 3 members began drawing diagrams they claimed were memories from the silence. The drawings, verified by forensic analysts, matched architectural layouts found only in Tesla's final unpublished sketches. Layouts that formed harmonic fractals across time coordinates rather than space. Tesla had once described the gateway as a song only machines can sing, but minds can hear. He was wrong. The gateway doesn't sing, it waits, it resonates, and when the right chord is struck, by accident, by design, or by recursive frequency, it doesn't open a door. It makes the wall transparent, and what looks back through the glass does not blink. It ends, as all great unspoken truths do, not with disclosure, not with revelation, but with burial. In 2016, the Defense Intelligence Agency quietly issued Directive Echo Sigma 7, classifying all research related to Tesla harmonic sequences as a Category 4 cognitive hazard under the threat analysis framework. This placed Tesla's oscillator principles in the same classification tier as theoretical temporal weaponry and autonomous consciousness substrates, technologies deemed not only dangerous, but ontologically corrosive. The reasoning was simple and chilling. The more people understood the gateway, the more likely it was to reactivate. In the decades since, every major tech platform has been algorithmically screened for traces of harmonic code leakage. Audio sharing sites are scanned in real time for suspicious waveforms. AI-based language models are restricted from simulating recursive phrase loops. Even white noise apps, which many consider harmless, are now quietly monitored for pattern anomalies. The fear is not that someone will build the machine. The machine already existed. The fear is that someone, somewhere, will recreate the resonance. Accidentally, casually, repeating a sequence they heard in an old podcast, or read in an obscure footnote, or dreamed while sleeping near power lines built atop copper grids Tesla himself once designed. The truth is this: the gateway never closed. It was never a portal to another place. It was an invitation to a different mode of perception, one that reconfigures not the world, but the lens through which we interpret it. What Tesla created was not hardware. It was conceptual software, coded not in bits, but in frequencies, harmonics, and recursive thought forms. That's why his final documents were so feared, not because they built a bridge to something else, but because they suggested there is nothing else, just echoes, infinite mirrors in a black chamber, each reflection slightly different, each iteration more aware of us. There are still rooms beneath data centers under deserts, behind radiation-sealed vaults, where the oscillators hum quietly, watched by men who do not speak. They don't experiment anymore. They record and wait. Because the final transmission Tesla wrote, a single line scrawled across the back of his last diagram, remains unresolved. It read, "If you are reading this, it has already begun." No one knows whether he meant the signal, the awakening, or the recursion itself. But those who've seen the waveform say the same thing, not in fear, not in awe, in understanding. It was never about reaching outward. It was about remembering what always listened back. Finalne zamечание, всегда в конце ролика. And if you think this was just a story, just a fringe tale, try this. Tonight before you sleep, hum 3 tones, exactly 33 seconds apart. Keep your room quiet. Let your thoughts drift. And if you feel a pressure behind your eyes, don't open them, because if you do, you won't be alone.